Jazz. The day I married Ethan should have been the happiest day of my life. The church was filled with smiling faces. Soft music echoed through the hall. My friends kept telling me how lucky I was. Jazz. My mother couldn't stop crying because she believed my late father would have been proud to see me wearing my wedding dress. I smiled for every photograph. I held Ethan's hand. Jazz. And I promised to love him forever. But there was one thing I didn't know. The man standing beside me wasn't marrying me because he loved me. Jazz. He was marrying me because of a secret my father had taken to his grave. A secret that could change someone's life forever. At first I ignored the small signs. The late-night phone calls. Jazz. The strange questions about my father's old office. The way Ethan became nervous whenever I mentioned the locked wooden box my father had left behind. I thought he was simply curious. Jazz. I couldn't have been more wrong. Everything changed just 17 days after our wedding. That evening, I came home earlier than expected. The house was unusually quiet. As I walked toward the study, Jazz, I heard Ethan's voice. He wasn't talking to me, he was laughing. Then I heard the words that shattered my heart. She still has no idea. Once I get what's inside that box, I'll be done with her. I froze. Jazz. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands started shaking, and my wedding ring suddenly felt heavier than ever before. Every beautiful memory we had shared began to fall apart inside my mind. Jazz. Had our love been real, or had I been nothing more than a part of someone else's plan? I wanted to run into that room and demand the truth, but something inside me stopped me. Instead, I stayed silent. Jazz. Because if Ethan thought I knew nothing, then he would never see what I was about to do next. And before this story was over, the secret he wanted so badly would become the very reason he lost everything. Jazz. Before everything fell apart, I truly believed I was one of the luckiest women in the world. My name is Claire, and for most of my life, my father was my greatest hero. Jazz. He wasn't a rich businessman or a famous man. He owned a small architecture company that he built from nothing. Jazz. Everyone who knew him respected him, because he believed that honesty was worth more than money. When I was 16, he gave me one piece of advice that I never forgot. Never trust words alone. Jazz. Watch what people do when they think no one is looking. At the time, I laughed and told him he worried too much. I had no idea those words would one day save my life. Jazz. My father passed away 2 years before I met Ethan. Losing him felt like losing the strongest part of myself. The house became quiet. Birthdays no longer felt special. Jazz. Every corner reminded me of the man who had always protected me. For months, I buried myself in work, just to avoid thinking about the pain. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. Jazz. I stopped at a small coffee shop near my office to escape the weather. Every table was full except one. A tall man walked over with a warm smile and politely asked if he could sit there. That man was Ethan. Jazz. We spent almost an hour talking without even noticing the time. He was funny, calm, and surprisingly easy to talk to. Before leaving, he smiled and said, Jazz, I have a feeling this isn't the last time we'll meet. For the first time since my father's death, I found myself smiling on the drive home. A week later, Ethan invited me to dinner, then another dinner. Jazz. Soon our conversations became part of my daily routine. He remembered the little things I told him. He brought me my favorite coffee without asking. When I had a difficult day, Jazz, he listened instead of trying to fix everything. He seemed different from anyone I had ever met. Even my mother liked him. I haven't seen you this happy in years, she told me one evening. Jazz. Maybe she was right. Slowly, the sadness I had carried for so long began to fade. A year later, Ethan proposed during a quiet walk by the lake where we had shared our first real date. There were no cameras. Jazz. No crowd, just the two of us. With tears in my eyes, I said yes without a second of doubt. Looking back now, I realized something that I couldn't see then. Whenever Ethan visited my house, he always found a reason to ask about my father. He wanted to know about his business, his old office, his files, even the locked wooden box that sat untouched on the bookshelf. I thought he admired my father. I thought he simply wanted to know more about the man who had raised me. I never imagined those innocent questions had a hidden purpose. A few weeks before the wedding, my father's old lawyer called and asked if I could stop by his office after the honeymoon. He said there was something important my father had wanted me to receive when the time was right. I didn't think much of it. Neither did Ethan. At least, that's what I believed. If only I had noticed the brief look in his eyes when I mentioned the lawyer's call. It lasted only a second. But it wasn't excitement. It was something much darker. And that was the first clue that the man I loved was hiding a truth that would soon change everything. The first few weeks of our marriage looked perfect from the outside. We laughed over breakfast, watched movies on quiet evenings, and made plans for the future. Friends kept telling us we were the perfect couple. Whenever someone asked how married life was going, I smiled and said, "Better than I ever imagined." I believed every word, but little by little, small moments began to bother me. At first, they didn't seem important. Ethan suddenly became interested in parts of my life he had never cared about before. One evening, while we were having dinner, he casually asked, "Have you ever opened your father's old study since he passed away?" I shook my head. "There was never a reason," I replied. "Everything is exactly where he left it." He smiled and nodded, but I noticed something strange. He didn't ask about my father. He asked about the room. A few days later, I came home from work earlier than usual. As I walked upstairs, I found Ethan standing inside my father's study. He quickly stepped away from the bookshelf when he saw me. "Oh," he said with an awkward laugh. "I was just looking for a pen." I smiled, but something didn't feel right. There were dozens of pens downstairs. Why would he come into the one room he knew I rarely entered? I pushed the thought away. Maybe I was overthinking. After all, he was my husband. Trust was supposed to come naturally. Then came the questions. They were always asked casually. "So, what exactly did your father leave behind? Did he ever mention a safe?" "Did he keep important papers anywhere? Did he trust anyone besides the family lawyer?" Every time I answered, Ethan listened more carefully than seemed normal. Sometimes he would ask the same question in a different way a few days later. It felt less like a conversation and more like someone collecting pieces of a puzzle. Then something even stranger happened. One Saturday morning, I noticed the locked wooden box my father had left behind was no longer sitting exactly where I remembered. It had only moved a few inches. Most people would never notice, but I did. I had dusted that shelf every month for 2 years. I knew exactly how everything was arranged. When I asked Ethan if he had touched it, he smiled without looking at me. "No, maybe you moved it yourself." His answer sounded simple, but his eyes told a different story. For the first time since our wedding, I felt a quiet fear growing inside me. A week later, my father's lawyer called again. "Claire," he said warmly, "I hope you're doing well. There's no rush, but I'd still like you to come by next week. Your father left instructions that only you should hear. Only you." Those 2 words stayed in my mind. That evening, I mentioned the phone call to Ethan. Something changed on his face for just a second. His smile disappeared. "When are you going?" he asked immediately. "I'm not sure," I answered. "Probably sometime next week." He looked away before forcing another smile. "Oh, that's good." It didn't sound good, it sounded nervous. That night, I woke up around 2 in the morning. The other side of the bed was empty. I walked downstairs and noticed a light coming from my father's study. The door was slightly open. I could hear papers moving. Just as I reached for the handle, the noise stopped. A second later, Ethan walked out. He looked surprised to see me. "I couldn't sleep," he said quickly. "I was looking for an old notebook." I nodded slowly. But I knew he was lying. There were no notebooks in that room. Only memories. As we walked back upstairs, my father's words echoed in my mind for the first time in years. Never trust words alone. Watch what people do when they think no one is looking. For days I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. Maybe grief had made me protective of my father's belongings. Maybe Ethan was simply curious. Maybe there was an innocent explanation for everything. But deep inside, a quiet voice kept whispering the same warning. Something wasn't right. And I was about to discover that those small red flags were only the beginning of a betrayal far bigger than I could ever imagine. For the next few days I said nothing. I smiled when Ethan smiled. I laughed at his jokes. I kissed him goodbye every morning before work. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, I was paying attention to everything. Every phone call, every late-night text. Every excuse, every little lie. Then, one Friday afternoon, my father's lawyer finally called again. "Claire," he said, "I think it's time. Can you come to my office today?" "There are things your father wanted only you to know." His voice sounded serious. I agreed without telling Ethan. An hour later, I was sitting across from Mr. Harrison, the man who had worked with my father for more than 20 years. He opened an old file and smiled sadly. "Your father trusted very few people," he said. "But he trusted you more than anyone." He slid a sealed envelope across the desk. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, my father's handwriting. Tears filled my eyes before I even read the first line. "My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here to protect you. But I pray you'll always remember one thing. Not everyone who enters your life comes with honest intentions." I stopped for a moment. It felt as though he was sitting beside me. The letter continued. "There's a key inside this envelope. It opens the wooden box in my study. What is inside doesn't belong to anyone else. Only open it when you feel ready." A small silver key slipped from the envelope into my hand. Mr. Harrison looked at me kindly. "Your father also asked me to tell you something," he said. "What is it?" I whispered. "He believed someone might one day try to earn your trust just to reach what he left behind." A chill ran through my body. Those words felt impossible. How could my father have known? I thanked Mr. Harrison and left the office, my mind racing. I wanted to go straight home and open the wooden box. But something told me to wait. Instead, I parked across the street from my house. Just as I turned off the engine, I saw Ethan walking out the front door. He looked around carefully before getting into his car. Curious, I followed him. 20 minutes later, he parked outside a quiet restaurant. A woman was already waiting for him. She stood up, hugged him, and they sat together in a corner where they believed no one could see them. I stayed outside, my heart pounding. Then I remembered the small voice recorder my father had once given me for work meetings. It was still in my purse. Without thinking twice, I walked into the restaurant, pretending to be on my phone, and chose a table just behind them. Neither of them noticed me. At first they spoke quietly. Then I heard my name. "How much longer?" the woman asked. Ethan smiled. "Not much. She's starting to trust me with everything." My heart sank. The woman leaned closer. "And the box? I'll have it soon." Ethan replied. "The lawyer finally contacted her. Once she opens it, I'll convince her to let me see what's inside." The woman laughed. "I still can't believe she fell for the whole perfect husband act." Ethan laughed too. You'd be surprised what people believe when they're lonely. Every word felt like a knife. The man who had promised to love me forever, the man I had trusted with my heart, Jazz, had never loved me at all. I wasn't his wife. I was his plan. Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I kept listening. If everything goes as planned, Ethan continued, Jazz, we'll finally have what we've been looking for. And after that, the woman asked. He shrugged. I'll file for divorce. She'll never know what really happened. For a moment, Jazz, the entire room seemed to disappear. I couldn't hear the people around me. I couldn't hear the music. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. I quietly stood up and walked out before they could see me. Jazz. The drive home felt endless. When I finally stepped inside the house, Ethan was already there. He smiled the same warm smile that had once made me feel safe. You're home early, he said, Jazz. I forced myself to smile back. He kissed my forehead and asked about my day. As he spoke, I looked into his eyes. This time, I didn't see love, Jazz. I saw a stranger wearing the face of the man I had married. That night, while Ethan slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling. I finally understood everything, the questions, the lies, Jazz. The late-night searches, the fake kindness, the perfect romance. It had all been an act. But as the pain slowly turned into determination, I made one silent promise to myself, Jazz. If Ethan thought I was broken, he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life, because from that moment on, I wasn't going to confront him. I was going to let him believe his plan was working, Jazz. And when the time was right, I would expose the truth in a way he would never forget. I didn't cry, at least not in front of Ethan, Jazz. The woman who had walked into that restaurant with complete trust no longer existed. In her place was someone who finally understood the truth. If I confronted him now, he would deny everything, Jazz. He would make excuses. He would twist every word until I started doubting myself again. No, I wasn't going to give him that chance. Instead, I decided to play the role he expected. The loving wife, Jazz. The trusting partner, the woman who knew nothing. The next morning, I woke up before Ethan and made his favorite breakfast. He looked surprised. What's the special occasion? He asked with a smile. Jazz. I smiled back. No reason. I just wanted to make you happy. He reached across the table and held my hand. If only he knew how difficult it was for me not to pull it away. For the next few days, Jazz, I acted exactly the same. I laughed at his jokes. I asked about his day. I even apologized for being too emotional the week before. Inside, I hated every second of it, Jazz. But every smile I gave him made him more confident. And confident people make careless mistakes. A few days later, I casually mentioned my father's wooden box. I think I'll finally open it this weekend, Jazz, I said while we were having dinner. For a split second, Ethan's eyes lit up. He tried to hide his excitement, but it was impossible, he asked. Maybe I can help you, Jazz. I pretended to think about it. Maybe. That single word was enough. From that moment, he became even more attentive. He brought me flowers. He insisted on cooking dinner, Jazz. He even cancelled plans with his friends. Not because he loved me, because he believed he was getting closer to the secret. Little did he know, I had already opened the box the night before, Jazz. After Ethan had fallen asleep, I quietly walked into my father's study with the silver key. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. Inside, there were old documents, family photographs, my father's journal, Jazz, and a small sealed envelope with my name written across the front. I opened the envelope first. Claire, my father wrote, if someone suddenly becomes very interested in this box, be careful, Jazz. The greatest treasure I leave behind is not money, it is the truth. I frowned. There was no fortune, no hidden gold, no secret account, just papers. I spent nearly an hour reading everything, Jazz. Then I understood. Years earlier, My father had helped expose a large financial fraud involving one of his former business partners. Before the investigation was complete, the partner disappeared, Yaz, leaving behind millions in unpaid debts and unanswered questions. My father had secretly kept copies of every document proving who was really responsible. Those papers had never been made public, Yaz. If they ever were, several powerful people would lose everything. Suddenly, Ethan's strange behavior made perfect sense. He hadn't married me for money. He had married me to get those documents, Yaz. I carefully placed everything back inside the box, except for one thing, the original documents. I locked them inside a safety deposit box at the bank the very next morning, Yaz. Then I replaced them with harmless copies. If Ethan managed to steal the box, he would get exactly what I wanted him to find. That evening, I made another phone call. Not to the police, not yet, Yaz. I called Mr. Harrison. When I explained everything, he wasn't shocked, he simply sighed. Your father feared this day would come, he said quietly. I have proof, I replied. I know, he answered, Yaz. Now let him finish making his mistake. His words gave me confidence. The next few days unfolded exactly as I expected. One evening, Ethan asked if I planned to leave the house on Saturday. I smiled, Yaz. My mother invited me for lunch. That's nice, he replied, trying to sound casual. What about you? Oh, I'll probably stay home and catch up on some work. I almost smiled, Yaz. I already knew his real plan. Saturday arrived. Before leaving, I walked into the study and placed the wooden box exactly where it had always been. I made sure Ethan saw me lock the door, Yaz. Then I kissed him goodbye. I won't be long, he smiled. I'll miss you. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Exactly 2 minutes later, Ethan walked straight toward my father's study, Yaz. But he didn't know one important detail. I hadn't gone to my mother's house. I had parked across the street with Mr. Harrison. And together, we were watching everything, because sometimes, Yaz, the strongest revenge isn't shouting the truth. It's giving someone enough time to expose themselves. And Ethan was only seconds away from doing exactly that. From across the street, Yaz. I watched Ethan unlock the front door. He looked over his shoulder once, making sure no one was watching. Then he disappeared inside the house. Mr. Harrison sat quietly beside me. Are you ready? He asked, Yaz. I took a deep breath. I have to be. We waited in silence. Every second felt like a minute. Then, through the living room window, I saw Ethan walk straight toward my father's study. He didn't hesitate, Yaz. He knew exactly where he was going. A few moments later, he came back holding the wooden box. His hands were shaking, not with fear, but with excitement, Yaz. He placed the box on the dining table and quickly unlocked it. Even from a distance, I could see the smile on his face. He believed he had won. He flipped through the papers one by one, Yaz. His smile slowly disappeared. He checked them again, then again. His breathing became faster. This can't be right, he muttered. There was no hidden fortune, no secret key, no valuable files, Yaz. Only ordinary copies and family papers. He searched the box again, throwing everything across the table. Frustration replaced confidence. That was the moment I had been waiting for, Yaz. I opened the front door and walked inside. Mr. Harrison followed a few steps behind. Ethan turned around so quickly that the papers fell from his hands. Claire, he stammered. You're home already, Yaz. I looked at the mess scattered across the room. The broken lock, the open box, the papers on the floor. Then I looked into his eyes. For the first time, I wasn't heartbroken. I was calm, Yaz. I thought you were working today, I said quietly. He tried to laugh. His words disappeared. There was no believable excuse. Mr. Harrison stepped forward. Joel, so this is what you were really after. Ethan's face turned pale. You don't understand, he said. No, I replied. I understand perfectly. The room fell silent after a long pause. Jazz. I reached into my bag and placed my phone on the table. I've heard every conversation, I said. His eyes widened. The restaurant, his face lost all color. You followed me? Yes, Jazz. And I recorded everything. For the first time since our wedding, Ethan had nothing to say. The confident man who always had the perfect answer stood completely silent. Just then, Jazz. Another car pulled into the driveway. It was my mother. I had asked her to come without explaining why. She walked inside, smiling at first. Then she noticed the room, the open box, the scattered papers. Jazz. The fear on Ethan's face. What happened? She asked. I looked at her with tears in my eyes. The man I married never loved me. She covered her mouth in shock. Ethan tried one last time. Jazz. It isn't what it looks like. I shook my head. No. It's exactly what it looks like. I pressed play on my phone, the room filled with the recording from the restaurant. Once I get what's inside that box, Jazz, I'll be done with her. Then another voice. I still can't believe she fell for the whole perfect husband act. Every word echoed through the room. No one spoke, no one moved. When the recording ended, Jazz. The silence felt heavier than any argument. My mother slowly stepped away from Ethan. Tears rolled down her face. I welcomed you into our family, she whispered. Jazz. You looked me in the eyes and lied every single day. Ethan lowered his head. There was nothing left to defend. Mr. Harrison calmly placed a folder on the table. The real documents are safe, he said. You never came close to them. Ethan looked up in disbelief. You knew? Mr. Harrison nodded. Claire knew before you ever opened the box. For the first time, I saw genuine panic in Ethan's eyes. Jazz. The man who had planned every step had completely lost control. I walked toward him, not with anger, not with hate, but with complete peace. Jazz. You thought my father's greatest treasure was hidden inside that box, I said. But you were wrong. He looked at me, confused. The greatest treasure he left me was his wisdom. Jazz. I remembered my father's words one last time. Never trust words alone. Watch what people do when they think no one is looking. Those words had protected me when love couldn't. Jazz. I slipped my wedding ring from my finger and gently placed it on the table beside the empty wooden box. Our marriage was built on a lie, I said quietly. So today, it ends with the truth. Jazz. Without another word, I turned around, took my mother's hand, and walked toward the front door. Behind me, Ethan called my name. I didn't stop, I didn't look back. Jazz. Because the man who had married me for a secret had finally lost the only thing he truly wanted. My trust. And once trust is gone, no secret in the world can bring it back. Jazz. Walking away from that house was the hardest thing I had ever done. Not because I still loved Ethan, but because I was leaving behind the future I had once dreamed of. For weeks, Jazz. I had imagined growing old with him, building a family, and filling that house with laughter. In just a few minutes, all of those dreams disappeared. Yet, as painful as it was, Jazz, I also felt something I hadn't felt in months. Freedom. For the first time since my wedding day, I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't smiling to hide my pain. I wasn't ignoring the lies. Jazz. I wasn't waiting for someone else to tell me my worth. I finally chose myself. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Jazz. There were nights when I cried because betrayal leaves scars that don't disappear overnight. There were mornings when I questioned how someone could fake love so perfectly. Jazz. But every new day reminded me that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about becoming stronger than the pain that tried to break you. With Mr. Harrison's help, Jazz, I made sure my father's documents were placed in the right hands. The truth was finally revealed, Jazz, and the people who had spent years hiding behind lies were forced to face the consequences of their own actions. As for Ethan, I never saw him again. Jazz. I heard that the people who had once promised to reward him quickly disappeared when his plan failed. The woman who had laughed with him in that restaurant also walked away. Jazz. The same man who had betrayed my trust was eventually left completely alone, not because I took revenge with anger, but because the truth has a way of exposing people without anyone raising their voice. Jazz. Months later, I returned to my father's study. This time, it didn't feel like a room filled with sadness. It felt like a room filled with memories. I picked up his old photograph and smiled. Jazz. "You were right, Dad," I whispered. "I finally understand." His greatest gift had never been the wooden box. It had never been the documents. It had never been a hidden secret. Jazz. His greatest gift was teaching me to recognize the difference between someone who speaks beautifully and someone who acts honestly. That lesson saved my future. A year later, Jazz. Life looked completely different. I expanded my father's company, surrounded myself with people I could truly trust, and slowly learned how to smile again. Not because someone else gave me happiness, Jazz, but because I had found it within myself. Looking back, I realized something important. If Ethan had never betrayed me, I might have spent my entire life believing a beautiful lie. His betrayal hurt me, Jazz, but it also opened my eyes. Sometimes, the people who try to use you unknowingly teach you your greatest strength. Sometimes, losing the wrong person is the first step toward finding the right life, Jazz. And sometimes, justice doesn't come through revenge. It comes through truth. So if you're listening to my story while carrying the weight of someone else's betrayal, remember this, Jazz. Never let another person's lies decide your value. People can fake love. People can fake kindness. People can even fake loyalty. But they can never fake the truth forever. One day, every mask falls. Jazz. Every secret finds its way into the light, and every lie eventually meets the truth. I didn't win because I exposed Ethan. I won because I refused to become like him. I walked away with my honesty, Jazz, my dignity, and the lessons my father left behind. In the end, that was worth far more than any secret hidden inside a wooden box, and that's the truth I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.